Anyone who has taken up a meditation practice for any length of time has encountered at some point or other mental resistance to the practice. The fact is, the mind, which is unaccustomed to the practice, resists discipline. Even the minimal discipline of just sitting still for whatever duration of meditation one has set for oneself. Now we can talk about that as a first point. What is a reasonable time to sit for meditation? You hear all kinds of estimates of from a few minutes to hours and hours of sitting. When I talk about a reasonable time of meditation, I'm speaking an hour or so. For most people, that's plenty of time for a single practice session. And when you're just beginning the practice, 5 or 10 minutes might be all that you can manage reasonably without strain. And that is always the best way to practice. That is, reasonably and without undue strain. However, assuming that you're not trying to strain yourself beyond your capacity and you're sitting your more or less normal meditation period and various distractions start to arise. And I'm not talking about external distractions like noisy neighbors or clawing cats or anything like that, but internal distractions and mental, psychological distractions that may even manifest in physical symptoms. Now, the culprit in these cases is something that I've called the spoiled child mind, or SCM for short. In traditional Hinduism and Buddhism, this phenomenon has also been called the monkey mind. Now, I've chosen spoiled child mind over monkey mind for some very simple reason. If a monkey is jumping around, it can be chained or confined in a cage and thereby greatly quieted. A child, by contrast, cannot be usually, or should not be, I should say, chained or caged to quiet it. A spoiled child has gotten there by a process of a great deal of indulgence. I'm not talking about an ordinary child, a normally well-behaved child. I'm talking about a spoiled child, a child that has been indulged to the point where it feels it can do whatever it wants, whenever it wants, and if it doesn't get what it wants, it protests loudly to everybody's grief. Now, so that child, however obnoxious it may be, cannot be caged or chained. It must be restrained in a more moderate way, in a more compassionate, measured way. And although this is a metaphor, we're not talking about a literal spoiled child mind here, but a metaphorical spoiled child, the mind is also childlike in that it's not something that responds well to excessive force. It's not usually spiritually beneficial to overtax the mind, to strain too much in practice. Many bad things can happen to people who try to meditate for too long or with too much intensity when they're not yet prepared for that. And so, especially in my tradition, the idea of slow and steady wins the race is better than forcing long periods of meditation. Also, in the type of meditation that is done in Tantra, typically, which is visualization, it requires in some ways more effort than just watching, like you get in some other kinds of meditation. Another reason why, especially in tantric meditation, you don't want to overdo it. But short of overdoing it, far short of overdoing it, people will often experience during meditation sessions that it seems that their allotted time for meditation is interminable. They can't believe that it's not yet time to get up. And so that's a typical manifestation of the spoiled child mind. Or one inexplicably becomes drowsy. Now, drowsiness in meditation can happen from just not getting enough sleep. And in our overstimulated world, a shortage of sleep is hardly in a shortage. We get lots of people who are sleep deprived to one degree or another. And the usual and sensible prescription for somebody who's not getting enough rest and is thereby getting drowsy in meditation is schedule more rest into your day because you need it. Otherwise, you're not going to be able to meditate well. But assuming you've got enough rest, you're not sleep deprived, and you're getting inexplicably drowsy, that's another way the spoiled child mind can try to derail your practice and keep you from disciplining it and yourself. Then other manifestations, restlessness that suddenly comes for no particular reason, various vague pains or shadows of pains that don't seem to have any evident cause can arise during practice that may want you to shift or otherwise disturb your practice. Itches that have no proximate cause. There's no mosquito biting you or fly crawling on you. Everything is fine, but suddenly you get this unbearable itch on the tip of your nose and feel like you absolutely must scratch it. These are the kinds of shenanigans of the spoiled child mind, and they ought to be rigorously resisted. Now, how to do that? Well, with things like the itch or the pains, ignoring them is the best way. Return to practice. Consider those sensations and thoughts as, the usual distracting thoughts that float through the mind and during any typical meditation practice, and you simply observe that they happened and continue directing your attention to the object of meditation. Or as we like to say, place your attention on the object of meditation and let it rest there. And that's an important point, letting it rest, because meditation is not something that you make happen so much as let happen. Another reason why the spoiled child mind needs to be handled with a delicate hand. So then what about restless movements? Again, resist. If you see that tendency, observe it and let your attention again return to rest on the object of meditation, assuring yourself that you can move later. Right now, you're going to keep practicing as you determine that you want to do. And then drowsiness can be a more difficult problem. Now, it is said, the legend is, that the tea plant arose when a Buddhist monk fell asleep during meditation, and so he sliced off his own eyelids and to stay awake, and that the eyelids, when they fell on the ground, a tea plant sprung up from them. Interesting. which only points to how old the issue of drowsiness in meditation must be. So it's not something new. Great meditators have dealt with this issue, and tea or other stimulating beverages prior to practice is a completely reasonable remedy if you're able to tolerate caffeine. The other possibility is when you're repeating a mantra, to repeat it faster with more energy than before. That can help stir up what in Tantra psychology is called the rajas, or that quality of activity that helps to overcome tamas, the quality of inertia, and can waken the mind, bring it more towards serenity by overcoming the inertia. So this is, in a nutshell, is the concept of the SCM, the spoiled child mind, and some of the simple ways to deal with it. And I can't emphasize enough how important it is to have strategies for dealing with this SCM, because it can, quicker than almost anything, undermine your practice, and then you end up having no practice.